Welcome to our channel Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. Malik walked through the city at dusk, feeling the weight of something he could not name. He had no target, no enemy, no past grudge, a strange urge pushing him toward people he did not know. Strangers felt easier than memories, easier than facing the mess inside him. He believed that if he chose someone with no connection to him, someone whose face meant nothing, the darkness inside him would quiet down. But as he stepped deeper into the night, moving from street to street, he began to learn that even strangers carried stories, and their silent lives would challenge everything he thought he understood about himself. The evening air felt heavy as Malik walked down the quiet street, steps slow, almost cautious, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping world. He kept his hood up, even though the temperature was warm and the sky still held a soft orange glow. People passed him now and then. An old man with a grocery bag, two teenagers arguing about a game, a woman walking her dog. No one paid attention to him. No one looked twice, and that was exactly how he liked it. For weeks, Malik had been searching for someone, though even he wasn't sure who. Not someone he knew. Not someone who had done anything to him. Just someone. A stranger. Someone whose face meant nothing to him. Someone who would not recognize him even if they lived through the night and saw him again. The idea felt strange even to him, but it kept pulling at his mind like a thread he couldn't stop unraveling. He paused near the small park at the corner of Maple and 3rd. The swings moved lightly in the breeze, empty and squeaking. A couple sat on a bench, laughing softly. They were too happy, too distracted, too connected to each other. Malik moved on. He didn't want someone who would be noticed when they were gone. He didn't want grief chasing him. He wanted emptiness. Clean, quiet emptiness. He turned onto a darker street, where the streetlights flickered and the houses looked tired. A man stood near a bus stop scrolling through his phone. Malik watched from across the road. The man was alone, lost in his own world. This could be the one. But then a bus pulled up, doors hissing open. The man stepped on without ever seeing Malik. The chance disappeared. Malik kept walking, breathing slowly. He didn't know why he was doing this. People always asked why someone would target strangers, as if the answer was hidden deep inside some dark corner of the heart. But Malik felt the opposite. There was no deep reason at all. There was nothing personal, nothing emotional, nothing connected to past pain or old wounds. It was the lack of meaning that drove him. When he hurt people he knew, the weight of memory stayed with him. He didn't want that anymore. He didn't want names or shared histories haunting him. Strangers were clean. Strangers were blank pages he could tear without guilt. He reached the old bridge by the river. Rust covered the metal railings, and weeds pushed through cracks in the sidewalk. A single figure stood at the center, leaning over and staring at the slow-moving water below. Malik slowed his steps. The person was small, maybe a teenager, maybe a young adult, wearing a backpack and tapping their fingers nervously against the rail. He approached quietly. The stranger didn't turn around. Malik stopped a few feet away, unsure why his heart was beating faster. Maybe because this moment felt heavier than the others. The air felt colder here, as if the river itself was holding its breath. "Are you okay?" he heard himself ask, surprising even himself. He hadn't planned to speak. He hadn't planned to make contact in any human way. The stranger startled and looked up. It was a young man, probably 18 or 19, with dark hair falling into his eyes. He looked tired, like he had cried recently. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice trembled. Malik felt something shift inside him. This one was not as blank as he hoped. There was a story in his eyes, a story that Malik did not want to know. He had chosen strangers because they were supposed to feel distant. Standing here now, he felt too close. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Malik said. The boy gave a short laugh. "Is anyone ever really with anyone?" Malik didn't answer. He remembered being that age, thinking the world was too big and too dark. He wondered if hurting this boy would feel different. He wondered if it would feel wrong. The boy looked back at the water. "Do you ever think about just letting everything go?" he asked quietly. Malik felt the question land heavily. Too heavy. He took a step back. This wasn't what he wanted. This boy wasn't a clean slate. He carried storms inside him, and Malik had enough storms of his own. "I need to go," Malik muttered, turning away. "Wait," the boy said. "Do you know what time it is?" Malik froze. A simple question. A normal question. But to answer it meant staying. And staying meant connection. He checked his phone. "It's almost 8. The boy nodded. "Thanks. That was it." It should have ended there. Malik should have walked away. But something in him refused to move. He stood still, wondering why he couldn't do it. He had planned for weeks. He had told himself strangers were safer, easier, forgettable. But this boy didn't feel forgettable. "What's your name?" the boy asked suddenly. Malik hesitated. "Just someone passing by." The boy gave a tired smile. Everyone is someone passing by. Silence settled between them. The river moved. The wind whispered against the railing. Malik felt the weight of time pressing on him. He knew he couldn't stay here, not if he wanted to keep his plan alive. He needed to find someone truly empty. Someone without questions, without sadness, without frightened eyes staring into the dark. "Take care of yourself," Malik said finally. He turned and walked away, faster this time, needing distance. He didn't look back. As he reached the end of the bridge, he realized something strange. Hurting strangers wasn't supposed to feel complicated. It wasn't supposed to make him think. It was supposed to be simple, clean. But tonight had proven that even strangers carried invisible stories. Those stories could reach out and grab him without warning. Still, he didn't stop walking. He didn't abandon the thought clawing at the back of his mind. He still felt the urge to strike, to release the pressure inside him. He still needed a stranger. But now he knew he had to be even more careful, even more distant. No conversations. No shared moments. No glimpses into someone else's pain. Just a shadow meeting another shadow. And then silence. Malik walked deeper into the night, letting the darkness settle around him like a heavy coat. The bridge and the boy on it slowly disappeared behind him, but the memory stayed stubborn in his mind. He hadn't planned for a moment like that. He had expected strangers to be easy, to stay faceless, to stay empty. Yet the boy's tired eyes kept floating back into his thoughts, refusing to fade. He tried to shake it off. He told himself it didn't matter. He wasn't looking for someone with a story. He was looking for someone without one. Someone who would drift through his memory like misseen for a moment, then gone forever. That was the whole point. That was why he had chosen strangers over people from his life. When he thought of people he knew, he felt a weight on his chest. When he thought of strangers, he felt nothing. That nothingness was what he needed. He reached a small shopping district that had mostly closed for the night. A few storefronts still glowed with dim lights, their signs flickering. A convenience store hummed softly, its door chiming whenever someone stepped in or out. Malik slowed his pace, observing the few people still out at this hour. A woman in a uniform leaned against the wall near the store entrance, sipping from a paper cup. She looked exhausted, her shoulders slumped, her eyes half closed. She was alone, but she didn't seem unaware. Every few seconds, she glanced around, as if expecting trouble. Malik moved on. He didn't want someone alert. He didn't want someone who might fight or scream. He wanted someone who would not even realize what was happening until the very end. Further down the street, delivery rider rested beside his bike, checking his phone. He was young, maybe 20, and his bright jacket made him easily noticeable. People would remember seeing him. People might ask questions. Malik decided he wasn't right either. He kept walking, searching for the blankness he needed. But the more he looked, the more he realized how full the world was, full of lives, troubles, memories, fears, hopes. Even the quietest stranger carried a world of their own. And each time he noticed that the urge inside him twisted in a strange way. It didn't disappear, but it hesitated, as if unsure which direction to pull him. He crossed the street and entered a narrower road lined with old apartment buildings. Laundry hung from balconies, swaying lightly in the night breeze. A dim alley opened on the left, filled with shadows. Malik paused. Alleys had always felt like places where people vanished from the world's attention. If someone disappeared here, The darkness itself would swallow them. He stepped inside. The alley smelled of damp concrete and something metallic. Trash bins lined one side, and a flickering light from a window above cast uneven shapes on the walls. A few steps in, he heard quiet shuffling. His heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with focus. He moved carefully, each step silent, blending into the darkness. At the far end of the alley stood a man older than Malik, maybe in his 40s. He wore a long coat and seemed to be searching through a bag on the ground. He muttered to himself, though the words were too soft to hear clearly. He looked tired, lonely, and disconnected from the world outside the alley. Malik watched him for a moment. The man didn't seem to notice he wasn't alone. This could be it. No witnesses. No connection. No story Malik had to know. Just a stranger who would disappear into the shadows. But as Malik stepped closer, the man suddenly turned. Their eyes met. The man blinked, confused but not frightened. He straightened slowly. "Do you need something?" the man asked, his voice rough and worn. Malik stopped. He hadn't expected him to speak. He hadn't expected to be seen so clearly. For a moment he said nothing. The man waited, his brow creased in mild concern. "You okay, kid?" the man asked. Malik felt something uncomfortable rise in his throat. Kid. Not threat. Not attacker. Not shadow. Just kid. A simple, ordinary word that made him feel like he was standing in the wrong place, caught doing something he shouldn't be doing. He forced himself to stay calm. "I'm fine," he said softly. The man nodded, though he looked uncertain. "It's late to be wandering around here. Be careful." The words were simple, but they hit Malik harder than he expected. Why did these strangers keep speaking to him like they cared? Why did they offer kindness instead of fear? It made the emptiness he was searching for slip through his fingers like water. He stepped back. He couldn't do it now. Not after being spoken to like that. Not after being seen as human. He turned away quickly and left the alley. Feeling the man's confused stare on his back until he stepped into the street again, he breathed deeply, trying to steady himself. This night wasn't going the way he had imagined. Every stranger he approached seemed to pull him back, forcing him to look at something inside himself that he didn't want to see. He walked aimlessly until he reached an open plaza. Most lights were off, but a few lamps glowed softly, casting long shadows across the wide space. A fountain stood at the center, no longer running, its waters still and dark. The whole place felt abandoned. A single figure sat at the edge of the fountain, a woman. Maybe in her 30s, hugging her knees and staring at the tiles beneath her feet. She didn't look around. She didn't move. Her stillness made her seem almost carved out of the night. Malik approached slowly. This one seemed different. No tired stare, no questions, no sudden turn. She didn't even notice him. But as he got closer, he heard quiet, shaky breaths. She was crying silently, carefully, as if she didn't want the world to hear her breaking. Malik froze again. Why was everyone tonight filled with pain he didn't want to touch? The woman lifted her face slightly, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. She still hadn't seen him. He could walk away, or he could stay. Or he could step forward and finally do what he came out to do, but his body refused to move. Something inside him tightened painfully. He didn't want to see her crying. He didn't want to know she was hurting. He didn't want to know anything about her at all, yet here she was, soaking the empty plaza with her grief. He turned away again, frustrated, confused. Why was this so difficult? Why couldn't he find the simple emptiness he wanted? Why did every stranger feel too real, too fragile, too human? As he walked back toward the street, he realized the night was almost gone. The sky had begun to shift toward gray, dawn approaching slowly. Soon people would pour into the city again. The world would wake up. His chance would fade until the next night. He stopped on the sidewalk. Staring at the growing light in the sky, he didn't understand what was happening to him. He only knew one thing. He still wanted a stranger. He just didn't know why every stranger tonight felt like someone he couldn't touch. The morning light felt unfriendly, as if it were pushing Malik out of the shadows he had been hiding in. He walked fast, keeping his head down, moving through streets that were slowly filling with early rising workers. He did not want to be seen now. He did not want the world to wake up while he was still wandering with thoughts that made no sense anymore. He reached a quiet corner near an old library and sat on a low stone wall. Birds chirped somewhere near a tree, and the sound annoyed him. It felt too cheerful, too careless. How could the world sound so alive when he felt so tangled inside? He pressed his hands together, staring at the ground. All night, he had looked for a stranger, someone without a story, someone he could hurt and then forget. But instead, every person he found had reminded him of something troubling. Strangers were not empty at all. They had faces full of things he did not want to understand. They had sadness, confusion, fear, hope. They were too real, too alive, too human. He closed his eyes. He wished he could understand himself. Why had he decided that hurting strangers would make anything easier? What had he expected to feel afterward? Relief? Silence? Release? Nothing seemed clearer now. Everything felt heavier. The memory of the boy on the bridge returned first, his tired eyes reflecting the river below. Then the man in the alley, calling him kid in a soft, worn voice. Then the woman at the fountain, crying quietly into the night. None of them had been the blank shapes he imagined. None of them had been ghosts. And the more their faces crowded his thoughts, the more Malik felt something inside him bending in a direction he didn't expect. He pushed himself off the wall and began walking again, following no specific path. He passed a cafe preparing to open, chairs still stacked on tables. A woman swept the entrance, pausing to smile politely as he walked by. He nodded back out of reflex. The smile bothered him, but not because it was wrong. It bothered him because it felt normal. People were supposed to look at each other like that. People were supposed to exist without fear of someone like him drifting through the night. He kept moving until his steps took him past a school playground. Children were arriving early for some morning program, laughing and chasing each other through the gates. Parents waved goodbye. Teachers greeted them with warm voices. Malik stopped across the street, watching. Something about the scene made him feel strange, like he was standing behind a glass wall, watching a world he no longer belonged to. He turned away quickly, almost tripping over his own feet. He felt sick. The thought of what he had almost done, what he had wanted to do, twisted inside him in a way he hadn't felt before. He leaned against a lamppost, breathing slowly, trying to understand the cold feeling spreading through him. He realized then that it wasn't guilt or fear that chilled him. It was the sudden understanding that strangers were not stand-ins for the emptiness inside him. They were not solutions. They were just people, and hurting them would not make his own darkness smaller. It would only give it more room to grow. He sank down onto a bench nearby, feeling the weight of the night finally catching up to him. He looked at his hands. They didn't look like the hands of someone who wanted to cause pain. They looked like anyone's hands, tired, trembling. Unsure, he remembered something the boy on the bridge had said. Is anyone ever really with anyone? It had sounded lonely. Malik felt that loneliness now, but in a different way. The boy had been searching for connection, or maybe escape. Malik had been searching for someone to absorb his own emptiness, but no stranger could do that for him. All he had found were mirror's eyes, reflecting pieces of himself he didn't want to see. He realized then that targeting strangers had never been about them. It had always been about him running from his own thoughts, his own history, his own broken places. He had convinced himself that hurting someone he did not know would feel clean, weightless. But now he understood something important. Nothing done in darkness stays weightless. A bus pulled up to a stop down the street. Doors opening with a soft hiss. A few people got on. Malik watched them from the bench. They looked tired, sleepy, normal living pieces of a world he felt distant from, but also strangely drawn toward. He wondered what it would feel like to step onto that bus, to sit among people who had no idea how lost he was. He wondered if being close to others, even without speaking, might make the world feel less sharp. He stood slowly and walked toward the stop. His pace was calm, steady, not hurried, not hiding. He had no plan, no destination. He just knew he needed to move in a direction that wasn't the same as last night, as he stepped onto the bus. Felt the driver glance at him briefly, then look forward again. Malik took a seat near the back, where he could watch the city through the window. The engine rumbled softly, and the bus rolled forward. He watched the buildings slide by, the sky brightening. He watched strangers sit down, read messages on their phones, sip coffee, stare out windows. No one looked at him twice. They didn't need to. They didn't know the storm he carried. They didn't know how close he had come to letting that storm spill into their world. But as the bus moved through the quiet morning, Malik felt something he hadn't felt all night. The pressure inside him was easing, even if only a little. Not gone, not solved, but quieter. Because he had finally faced a truth he had been avoiding. Hurting strangers would never make him whole. The bus continued forward, and Malik let himself breathe. He didn't know what he would do next. He didn't know how to fix the parts of him that felt broken. But he knew one thing clearly now: the faces from the night, the boy on the bridge, the man in the alley, the woman by the fountain. They had changed something in him. They had stopped him. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes, letting the bus carry him toward a morning he hadn't expected to see with this kind of clarity. He did not know where he was going, but for the first time in a long time, he was moving away from the darkness instead of deeper into it. As the morning lights spread across the city, Malik sat quietly on the bus, feeling the night's weight slowly lift. He had walked through darkness, searching for someone empty, someone he could hurt and forget. But instead, every stranger he met had shown him pieces of humanity he didn't expect: fear, sadness, kindness, and hope. Those faces stayed with him, stopping him before he crossed a line he could never return from. Now, as the bus carried him forward, he didn't know where he was going or how to fix what was broken inside him. But for the first time, he chose a path away from the darkness, letting the new day guide him towards something different, something better. For watching more amazing videos like this, subscribe our channel Crime Loom.